Hello, I'm Toycat and welcome back to another third channel walk and talk video. Today I'm in Christchurch in the south of England. I think it's a town. It's near Bournemouth, which is a city, and I think it's part of the same wider area. But people like it when I'm very specific about places that most people haven't heard of. So hello and welcome to Is It Really Called Christchurch, or am I in Mudderford right now? Those both sound like fake place names, but only one of them is real. You'll find out at the end of the video which it is. Anyway, also an interesting thing is the fact that I am walking for a lobster roll, and I wanted to use lobster rolls, which are my favorite form of showing exuberance. I mean, you can get something that is just as good on most levels as a lobster roll, but costs a quarter as much. A lobster, I'm going, even in the south of England, this is a pretty cheap area as far as food goes. Got a Yorkshire pudding wrap for £5, but I'm spending £17.50 on this lobster roll, which is at the end of like an hour-long walk too. So I'm spending a lot of money on something, and so I figured let's do a third channel finance video in the form of a walk and talk. Is that a good idea? No, I should definitely actually separate them out correctly. But let's talk about one of the most interesting things in wealth, which is that there are two types of wealthy people, air quotes, and knowing the difference between them is the difference between your life going on a very healthy trajectory and maybe your life going on the opposite. It can genuinely be one of the biggest lessons to learn in your life and indeed in business. So let's talk about what it is, because there is two types of wealthy. There is wealthy, there is high wealth money having, and then there is high cash flow having. A lot of people mistake these two things because, interestingly enough, the type of rich that creates high wealth is the exact opposite type of rich that creates high cash flow wealth. And let's talk about them, because one of the weird quirks of driving, because I'm down here in the south of England to learn how to drive. It's day free, by the way. It went pretty well today. I really don't like I don't like the clutch does a slightly different thing between like 0 and 5 miles per hour as it does for the rest, and also from 5 back to 0 you have to be very different with it, and it's slightly confusing for me still. But otherwise, I went 70 miles per hour today, and I was like really confident and good. I did a ton of roundabouts, I had to do like 20 roundabouts to get from one point to another because the south is filled with them. You know, this is one of the easiest places to get a driving license, but for some reson you got to do that. Anyway, we're here to talk about wealth and cash flow in the very broad terms, because interestingly enough, a lot of people assume that like if you have a high-paying job, that means you have lots of money and therefore you're wealthy, and therefore if you have a low-paying job, you have not lots of wealth and you're not wealthy. But this is mistaking the two fundamental differences between a business like McDonald's, which has honestly, it sells burgers for 99p, and sure, they're selling millions of those burgers, but how much profit do you really think them McDonald's are making on a 99p hamburger? Even if you're massively overestimating it and you're saying, yeah, it's like half or something like that, which again, it's incorrect, especially once you include all of the many fees that go into actually running a restaurant like that. It's like, no, they sell a lot of things, and the real value is that they have a lot of assets that they've built over years of being the world's favorite, not even the world's favorite fast food, the world's most tolerable, acceptable, you know, I don't want to be mean to McDonald's, it is delicious, but you know, like people don't even like it, and they have all of those assets, which their actual business model comes in the form of having just a ton of real estate, but that's a point for another day. So they own all of these restaurants all around the world in many key markets, in many key locations too. That's the value that comes with McDonald's. Whereas if you look at the reverse, you know, example of that, I actually don't have another company in mind, which, you know, could have made a really good company point here if I had. But you know, if you look at the inverse case, it would be like, I don't know, I guess let's say a Porsche dealership or something. You know, they're selling very, or maybe what's even more crazy, has to spend their money to make their money concept. I'm sure there is one out there actually. But in all of these, you know, like super, like these companies that rake in a lot of money and then have to spend it all, and then therefore don't end up making very much. I feel like property development is an example of this. Like they get a loan for 100 million to build a building that costs them 100 million, and then they sell that to someone and they get like 105 million, and like on the paper they're like you know, they're raking it in. They're like, oh yeah, look how much money is pouring into this business on a day-to-day basis. You know, because 100 million loan is paid off over 10 years, whereas 105 million comes into the bank all at once. They have at some points dozens of millions sitting around in bank accounts. And so like that second type of wealthy seems much more wealthy, because again, when you build a multi-billion-dollar tower. You've got this huge thing that you feel wealthy about, and you know, all of the money from selling it comes in while you haven't paid off the debt. I actually don't know how real estate deals work on the end of that. You might have to pay off the loan to sell a building. I'm going to guess that if a bank collateralizes a loan based on the building of something, you probably do have to pay it off. But still, the point is there that, like, the way, you know, like tech companies and venture capital and the way finance is raised can make you seem really, really wealthy because you have a ton of money, but money isn't the whole thing in wealth. And it's really interesting to think about here. Yeah, this is definitely going to be an off the rails video, but I've got a long way to walk. It's like an hour. Again, I'm in the south. This is a seaside town, not even seaside. Like, yeah, it's by the sea. It is on the side of the sea, I would say. And despite being on the side of the sea, the nearest lobster roll is only in Christchurch. That's why I'm here. You know, I'm staying like 10 miles that way. I'm here in Christchurch, and even from Christchurch station, it's an hour-long walk. I was going to drive it, but then I realized I don't have a license. No, what happened is started driving it, got caught in traffic. It took half an hour to go, like, not very far. The lesson was over. Guy has kids he has to pick up from school or something. Whole thing. You know, why should I care, actually? You know, I bet he doesn't even have children. I bet those pictures of his kids he showed off were something else entirely. You know, actually, since I can just divert from the point here, screw it. You know, he, my driving instructor has 3 kids. He said really weirdly to me, like, yeah, I have 3 kids and 1 adopted kid. And I was like, or like 3 birth children and 1 adopted child. And like, at first I was like, man, just single this fella out, why don't you? Like, but like, he then went on to clarify, like, and the reason I say that is because, you know, having 3 children, you know, you just, well, he didn't say it this way, but he said you load the beans right into the money purse, and then 9 months later, a human being comes out, and the hospital doesn't check unless, like, you visibly look like you have a meth addiction or something. Even then, I'm not sure if they're allowed to. Is the hospital allowed to call out your meth addiction if they don't know about it? It's a good question, but I assume they have that power. But beyond that, yeah, you go to the hospital with the beans and the protein juice that have turned into a baby in your stomach, and then you go the next day, there's a baby in your arms. If you want to adopt a child, however, which is a much better thing for the world, right? You are taking a child off someone's hands, which, interestingly, like, if you actually look at the, you know, like, hello. If you actually look at the, if you look at the, see, that's like, that's the worst case scenario. People always ask how I talk to myself in public. It's like, the worst thing that's going to happen is that, very mildly, you know, this is why you get a stealthier camera, I reckon. You know, I'm going to walk into this big field. It's more space here than a fun little lane. Anyway, this is also why you maybe walk like this. I feel like we can pretend I don't exist this way. Like, who is Toy Cat? And why does he call himself by his internet name, even though we know he has a real birth name? Anyway, so adopting a child, better thing for the world, right? Like, even if you're a bad birth parent, you've just added a problem to the world. If you're a bad adoptee parent, it's like, sure, you might have reinforced that adoptee's worldview, but that's going to happen regardless, because, you know, there is no good parent solution for someone whose parents were so bad they had to throw them up for adoption. I admit, by the way, not everyone who gets adopted is that. I think actually I'm thinking of, like, a lot of parents put up their children for adoption before they're born. That's okay. Putting up your child for adoption after, I feel like 3 months might be fine. I think any more than that, and you... Okay, I have an update regarding the lobster roll. That was the only place within a very wide radius that did lobster rolls, despite being by the sea. Probably not a lobster sea, I'll admit, but because it was Mexican night, they didn't do their normal menu, which included the lobster roll. And so this was an hour-long walk to go to a beach. And I don't even like beaches, but that's what life does to you sometimes, you know? Sometimes the journey is more important than the destination, which is a lie, because you wouldn't have a journey if you didn't have a destination. But I think the point is that people really do enjoy the process. But you can't do the process for the process's sake. That's the point I was making with yesterday's video about commitments, and how, like, I committed myself to walking quite far for a lobster roll, and even though the lobster roll was a lie, and in some part that hurts, that actually I walked a long way to go to a beach, like, I've got actual productive, important things I've got to be doing. Even though that's correct, it doesn't mean it wasn't fun Oh, it smells like sea right now. You know that salty, like, bad taste smell? Yeah, it smells like that. But yeah, no, I hope you'll enjoy this video regardless. Toy cat by the beach. This is not a common sight, so I hope you enjoyed your 1 in 1,000 look at it. I think I've got a lot of third channel videos to release. I want to add thumbnails to them, but like, how do I tell someone what I want from a third channel thumbnail when I don't even know myself? How do you... One of the hardest forms of anything, competency in the world, is like knowing what someone wants better than what that person wants. I want someone to be that good. Yeah, there's lots of things I want someone to be that good at in life. I should clarify. I want someone to be that good at third channel thumbnails. So give me some thumbnails, and then I'll give you videos, and you can make thumbnails for those videos. And then, I don't know, I can pay you money or something. Is that how they exchange it? But then I don't know, these videos make $2. Should I be paying people for the thumbnails? I'll pay you in love and affection. And I don't know, what do people say these days? They pay in exposure. Pretty sure that's a currency accepted on the wider market. So hope you enjoyed the video. Sad and disappointed, and we'll be going home hungry because I'd rather die than eat Mexican food by the beach. But I'm just kidding. I like Mexican food a lot. I would have eaten it, but it's like, it's quite restaurant-y in nature. Who wants to be by a restaurant? Not me. Anyway, hope you enjoyed. Third channel, don't care. Don't die, goodbye. You've ruined that child. Not ruined. Again, I'm using very strong words, but you're like, the development is going to be a lot harder. And yeah, maybe you find that interesting. Maybe that's just my opinion. Anyway, so as I was saying before, I was so rudely interrupted by this toy cat fella. One of the interesting little quirks of like wealth versus money is that like all of the ways that people show off wealth to show people that they have wealth is one of the fastest ways to train it. And this is like, you know, like, ooh, you know, like you spend all your money trying to show that you have money, showing that you actually don't have any money. Because if you have 100,000 in the bank, you can't show that to people besides just walking around with your bank statements. Which, side note, funny flex to do in a club, right? That's there's a fun idea for you. But I want to do that so bad now. That feels like a good. I guess recording in a club feels like a minefield. There's just a dog. Is that a real dog? That is a real dog. How cute. Speaking of real dogs, that's the opposite of toy cats. If I was a real dog, there'll be balance in the world. However, I'm not a real dog. I'm a fake cat, I believe is what they call me. Anyway, so I'm heading back down to the coast now. I don't know, every beach town in the UK looks the same to me, but these beach towns, maybe it's just because I haven't been to one in a while, they all look so wealthy. Like that house has solar panels on and like this fancy wood effect. This one has like a giant loft conversion and a little balcony. Those ones are made of glass. Maybe just living by the seaside is the current, you know, the wealthiest people in society right now are old people, right? Because you're born in the 40s, 50s, 60s, post-war period. There's no real such thing as luxuries and flexing. Like, you'd flex on people in the 1950s by showing them, you know, your ration card and being like, yeah, I have 2 bacon shops left on mine. The government will allow me to buy from a store this week. And so I feel like that frugal mindset has accidentally meant that all of the money they have from their also admittedly higher salaries, lower prices and cost of living has all funneled into just like big pots of money they don't know what to do with. And if you're 70, you know, like if you are 70, what are you gonna do with a ton of money besides like either, if you're really nice, give it to some children or something, or spend it on a giant asset. And so here we have the houses in retiree level communities. I don't think everyone has retired. I mean, I can assume that Mini Driver must be, but it's still interesting things to think about, right? Anyway, so yeah, cash flow wealth is like where you have so much money coming in, but you're throwing it all out immediately. Like if you are like this is one of those weird concepts that's hard to explain, but if you have 100 million coming in a year and 99 million going out in expenses, 99.9 million going out expenses, you seem so wealthy because you're spending 99.9 million a year, but there's very little left accumulating. If it's a business, you call this profit. If you're a human being, you call this savings. Whereas if you earn $1 million a year and you only spend, you know, 50 quid because, I don't know, you live under the underpass and you eat beans and, I don't know, you only go to food banks exclusively, then all of a sudden you are, you know, your expenses every year, you look so much poorer. The man eating beans exclusively while living under the underpass looks a lot poorer than the guy or the business or the human, whatever, this analogy got muddled, that that spends 99.9 million a year on, I don't know, boat advertising and whatever dumb startup things they have, like an M&M bar and I don't know, stained glass windows for their car, or, you know, like whatever dumb things that people decide to spend lots of money on. And so yeah, it's interesting because there's like a very different wealth point. You know, like with many videos, that person stopped for a pigeon. That's so cute. You know, if everyone just stopped for pigeons like this, then we'd have fewer dead pigeons in the world. Or maybe pigeons would learn that they should actually just start flying. Side note, internet, you know, this pigeon looks nothing like other pigeons, and I see them all the time. Do you know what animal that is? Why did it fly just then, but it didn't fly for the giant car coming at it, you know? I just don't understand pigeons sometimes. Or even, is that a pigeon? Tell me your animal thoughts, internet. Anyway, so, yeah, the reason I wanted to talk about this is because, like, this taking a week of life to go for nice walks around the south coast, it's something I'm trying to find the positives in. Again, like, in my ideal world, the way you learn anything is by doing the thing. You know, this is the best way to learn pretty much everything in the world. Like the fact that again, like we have education systems and they're great and they're wonderful and they need to exist for good reasons. I'm sure we all agree. A lot of that reason is being a daycare for adults to work more. And then this is private. Please keep access clear, no turning. Is that private? That looks like a, I mean, it says private. I want to go back there though, but I shan't. There's even a lot of sign. I bet there's geese back there. I bet they're holding out the geese on me. Very disappointed in the Christchurchians. Christchurches? You know, what sort of a name is Christchurch anyway? Like, for real, we're gonna name a place. You know, like, oh yeah, well, you know, we're a church-going town. But what sort of church? Oh, well, we all do worship Christ at these churches. Oh, so a Christ church. Yeah, that's a real unique type of church right there. That's definitely not just that's definitely not just slamming some words together. Anyway, as I was saying before I was so rudely interrupted, that's my new favorite way to explain me going off on a tangent on myself. The meaner you are to yourself, the less mean other people can be. I believe those are the rules. As you can see, by the way, I lied to you. Christchurch isn't a real name. It's actually Muddyford that is real. I said, like, I said Muteford to the guy today, and I was like, Muteford? And I was like, okay. I knew looking at it instinctively that it might be Muddyford. It is Muddyford. What sort of a name is that? Very disappointed. Very disappointed in the British town system, which feels like it's just an insiders club to, like, which I know it goes back to, like, before spelling even made sense. But, you know, the only way to know how a British town name is spelt is either assume it's spelt, assume it's said dumb, or just happen to know because you've been there for a while. It's funny, this village, town, whatever the heck it is, it has the same effect as everywhere else, where we've slowly faded from, like, very, very wealthy to, like, oh, I guess things are okay. See, there's no one of these birds. They're not quite pigeons, right? They don't look like pigeons. I feel like I should know my basic birds, but you know what? You're a basic bird, and I don't know you. Yeah, you're the basic bird. Oh, there's a fish and chip shop there. Again, I must keep on my adventure. Oh, I don't have money. Oh, you need money to catch a bus in, like, old-fashioned places. I can't. I'm gonna have to do this walk all the way back to the station now. I got videos to make about about golems made of interesting ingredients. I can't be chilling in the middle of Moodford. It's definitely Moodford. I feel like it's one of those fun things where I'd have a lot of fun just saying the wrong name out loud, seeing how people react. Anyway, so as I was saying before, you know, someone interrupted me. As I was saying, I feel like the big problem is we have like you know, using wealth to signal wealth is a great way to show people, you know, like, I have made it and you've done some great things that you need to show off in the world. But I have this like alternative view that the best thing money can buy you is financial security. And the guy earning £1 million a year but not spending any, within 20 years he has 20 million lined up, whereas the company that spends 99,900,000, whatever, they spend 99.9% of their profit, their revenue on weird expenses. The moment there's a dip in their income, they're at negative 5 million, they don't have any money to cover it, and they go under. What actually happens is the business runs like 5 million under, like, for several years during the good times, and then during the bad times they're so over leveraged. Oh, little squirrel, very cute. They're so over leveraged that when the bad times come, they're just like, well, there's no way this is going anywhere, and they go under. Because in business, if you're not taking out the maximum amount of debt and investing it in things, you're doing it wrong, which is sad mentality. That's the point where I start to question. You know, that's the point in capital, you know, an ism of the capital kind, that maybe you could question, I feel like, where it's like, oh yeah, the only way to make sane business decisions and not borrow all the money is to do it slowly, or to have a ton of money lying around. Because if you have a ton of money lying around, then you can't call your own loan on yourself. Honestly, the lesson I've learned is, like with every power structure in life, the more you minimize it down to yourself, the better you can be. And like people, we have discussions about how big or small government should be all the time. And I don't know, but lots of people seem to end up at big as their default answer. Because, I mean, obviously if it was a good, you know, it would be a good government if it's a government I'm making up in my head. Never been a bad government in history. But the interesting thing about this argument, or the case you can make for it, is that, like, even if you have a really small government, you then have lots of private corporations that exist and have some amount of control over you. I mean, again, the fact that a bank has a say over whether your 100 million turnover business exists because they get to decide when they call back the loans and when, you know, when to keep lending more money or not. It's like, yeah, the solution is have enough money that you borrow from yourself, which is a dumb solution, but it is technically correct in the same way where it's like, oh, I don't like that. It's a dumb set of logic, but at least there is a way. You know, and that I think is why. That's why I think so many people do end up on the side of the political spectrum they do end up on. Is the amount of money you earn determinant on yourself, or is it determinant on society? Every sane human being says there's a mixture, right? Like, the smartest person in the world who would have the best business were they, you know, like, over here and educated well. Actually, nah, they, you know, actually the way it works is they never learned to read and they died of dysentery age 13. And it's like, well, that's not fair. But then when you go in a country, it's like, well, even then there are children who have such serious poverty, you know, maybe because they were born to parents who didn't get checked in the hospital because, you know, even though they look like they have a meth addiction, it could be proved, and the nurse didn't want to be rude. There are children born like that, who go through child poverty, which, you know, not eating will have some serious impacts on your mental development. Not just in terms of, like, your brain will develop less, but also in terms of stuff like, you know, your brain's going to be less smart, but also, like, your habits are going to be broken. Like, a broken upbringing takes a long time to get over. There's a famous quote that it takes, you spend your first 50 years on Earth getting over your first 20. And I think that, like, you know, like, errors in your raising cascade real quickly. I think even things that happen to you when you were 20 to, you know, like 20 to 25 even, they're going to have some ramifications on the rest of your life. 25 to 30, I bet. I don't know what the point is But I'd say the point you become like a full-blown, you know, like there is an age at which you start to take things as they come, or at least as a version of all the things that have come before, rather than directly this thing from the past. And I don't know what that point is, but I'm talking in illogicals now. So one thing I want to talk about, because it's been on my mind a lot, is this idea, because again, I'm doing a driving license. The idea of a driving license is you prove to the government that you're very good at driving so that you can go out and drive. However, as with pretty much any form of, when there's a bureaucracy behind it, when there is a stamping, you know, a rubber stamping agency or a rubber stamping concept, which, you know, also applies to universities. Universities are private in the UK, as best I know. I think they're private. I think they're non-profit entities, something like that. They're not quite charities, but they don't turn a profit. But they're, you know, they're organizations. They're private. They're out there to make some money, you know, ostensibly so they can reinvest in their services. I mean, in reality, they end up investing a lot in staff salaries and in things that maybe you wouldn't invest in if educational outcomes were your only target. But the point is, they're private companies, and they still fall for this exact same faulty piece of logic that, like, yeah, the way that you do something, you know, like the way you can prove that you're ready to do something is when we say so. Not like, oh yeah, you can prove this. No. There's ostensibly always some test, something like that, but it's when we say. In the case of university degrees, like obviously there's so much of like what your professor thinks about you, etc. And that's why so many people go through such lengths to get them to like you. If it didn't work, they wouldn't do it, right? And then when it comes to the driving test, like you know, your instructor will pick randomly, like, are you going to do an emergency start? Do you have to parallel park, or do you just have to, what's it called? A 3-point turn, but it's actually called a turning in the road, I think. Let's see what's over here, shall we? Okay, we're fine. And then even then it's like, there are faults that are like timing is wrong. Everyone gets their timing slightly wrong, right? There's no such thing as perfect timing, and there's no official guide on what isn't perfect timing, because it'd be very hard. So in reality, it comes a lot down to someone's opinion. So next Monday, my test and how that goes for me is gonna conclude some part, hopefully not a large part, but down to whether someone likes me a lot. And again, like, I have this big problem with like the idea that like, oh well, we can't get rid of them because they make people safer. Imagine a world where people didn't have driving tests. It would be chaos. I mean, people would be driving on the road with no ability, whereas the driving test, as we all know, it's the most amount of learning you do in your life, and so theoretically is the safest you can be. I mean, as we all know, fresh drivers famously don't have the highest insurance premiums and the highest crash rate. And do I just need to keep going on about things that don't happen to first-time drivers, but actually I'm being, of course, incredibly sarcastic, and these are things that very much do happen. Oh, am I going to go around? I'm going to go around. Do I need to keep going on? I don't think I need to keep going on, but we'll do it anyway. We're almost near the beach, by the way. Man, imagine living all the way back there and having to walk 40 minutes to the beach. You basically don't live near the beach. You live all the way in some seaside town that no one's ever heard of, and you don't even get the benefits of running into the beach or whatever. Anyway, as I was saying before, I was so rudely interrupted. There's something interesting about learning by doing that. Like, again, like when you're a university graduate, there are some jobs that love that concept, and there are some that are just like, you have used this to prove that you can do what is required of you for 3 years, roughly in this field. You'll pick up some skills, but most of the skills you learn are on the job that you are doing. It's not in the 3 years of university. In fact, even the first 3 years you're on a job, you'll learn more than the first 3 years of university or school or whatever. And the same with driving. I mean, like, it takes most people like, you know, several months, like 6 months, a year, something like that to learn. Versus the first 6 months to a year you're actually driving. You're in real situations. Not, again, I'm specifically learning for this test. There are things like doing a 45-degree park, I think it's called. You never have to do it from the the right hand side. I forget which way, but there's one direction you have to do it in, and the instructor's like, there's no point learning now. Learn once you got your car, do it on your own. Great idea, but this isn't for now. There's like 14 questions the instructor can ask you to confirm that you know how your car works. I asked how this other thing works. He's like, it's not on the 14 things. You can learn about it. I'll tell you about it, but like revise these 14 things, because tests are very good at getting people who are able to answer the things on the test, which again, in a way, is a good way of selecting. I'm not going to say it's there's 0 point to it, but it's a good way of selecting people who are good at the thing they're doing. Whereas the real world, I feel like, again, like in a way, school systems and university systems and tests and inane licenses and all of this craziness, in a way, it's all about testing your ability to do what you're told. On a broad level, I feel like it's because we want to filter all of the best jobs and best everything else to people who are most likely to do what they are. You know, like, it's rewarding loyalty to a society. That if you can do what society asks for you, of course you should get some reward for it. Of course, if you're doing what is asked, then you've done some great thing in that. That's, again, it's a form of filtering. It's got some great things by itself. But I've been thinking a lot because, you know, first of all, like, trying to explain what I do and how to do it to people is really hard. There are very few people who have been able to help me with what I'm doing, because I've been trying to hire help in the forms of even finding an editor. Like, video editing isn't a skill I have, but it's a skill, like, I know what I'm looking for. Describing it is really hard. Some people have this skill or they do not. Even the skill of, like, I hate to say it because this channel is terrible and it's a bad video and it's gonna have not many views because it's just me uploading something for the fun of it. But like, working out what title and what thumbnail and all these dumb details will get a video views is a genuinely important one. Working out an idea that can convert into one of those things and so will be enjoyed by people. It's really hard to find people who are good at these things. And it's one of those things I was terrible at for the first several years I did YouTube. It's something I learned by doing. And I feel like learning by doing is the better way of actually learning what you actually need to do. I think another interesting example, it's been on my mind a lot, and we're 40 something minutes into this video. We're only 29 minutes in. Every time I assume these videos have gone so long, and it's been a while since we've done a long one, so that's what this one's here for. You're welcome, internet. I think we've been going a little bit down the whole time. This is the angle we should have had. But should we go down the road that says no access to sea? It's not a very common road sign, is it? Anyway, as I was saying, before I was so rudely interrupted, I think that learning by doing something is how we instinctually do so much, and how we kind of instinctually learn brokenly. Like, I didn't realize until I really analyzed myself, which I've had to do a lot of recently, that a lot of, like, let's call it how-to relationship I learned, or, you know, like, via my first relationship. You learn about, like, oh, this is how dating works from TV shows and school and all these dumb sources. But then, like, you have a real human, actual person relationship, right? Where, like, oh, you know, you think that, I know, even the concept of, like, dates work this way. And it's like, well, actually, it's a little different to that. It's, you know, like, it's really just as simple as, like, hang out, they're with you, you're with them, and you've done a thing. There's no formal, ooh, would you like to go to a place with me for a time on an official date? In fact, even asking people on date is a very weird thing to do, comparatively to how you imagine it, or how, again, like, asking, like, hey, do you want to go out with me? Which is for some reason how people always tell it to you. Maybe when you're a teenager, there's some truth in that. But it's like, nah, it's a more interesting process than that. Again, maybe just for me. Maybe I am the only one doing it this way, and this is a broken thing I learned somewhere down the road. But there's a lot of things that I learned, you know, that I really like and really don't like, and really want and really don't want, entirely from these, like, early day relationships that are, like, still in there now. And I think about it a lot because it's almost like a shame, right? Oh, we are approaching the beach. It's almost a shame, right? Because it's things like that where you wish there was like relationships school. There was a thing you could do to prove you were ready, you are emotionally capable. And then, you know, because again, there's so many times you have to be like, wait, you really think that's correct? You really think this is normal? I don't know, like I feel like ghosting is something that has a huge emotional impact on people, and you don't know until it's happened to you. When it's not on you, like you think about it a lot and you're like, well, I mean, talking to them would be awkward for me, and so I just you know, like if it's awkward for me, it's awkward for them. I'll save them the awkward of breaking up with them. They'll probably just know when I don't talk to them ever again, wow, that's so great. But it's actually like, nah, if you've been through that, it's like, nah, it like breaks you emotionally. Like you spend every day being like, oh, they're probably just busy, and then it's like, nah, they're not busy, this is probably a breakup. And it's like, well, they could have just said, you know, it would be easy to say something, and it's only been 11 days, maybe they're in the hospital, and then you're like, no, this is definitely that. And then every now and then, you know, then when you're finally sure, it's been a month, and you're like, they're either dead or they broke, you know, this is the weak sauce way of breaking up. It's like, you're like, but, you know, what if? And you'll come up with the elaborate circumstance. It's actually the thing, this is very, what's the word, vain to say. It's actually the thing that when we realize when people go missing, people are always like, it's so hard because you just don't know what to think. Like knowing someone is dead is better than them going missing, which always felt like incorrect to me, you know? Like it always felt inaccurate. It always felt like a lie. Here we are, by the way. I do like to be beside the seaside. I do like to be beside the sea. It's a nice enough beach, right? It's like semi-gravelly. Let's hop over this wall. Let's go. It's wacky to think that like just a few short weeks ago, this would be like a busy coastline. People pitching tents or whatever people do on the beach. Do you pitch tents on the beach? No, you put yeah, like beach tents, right? Honestly, I don't understand beach culture. You know, I hate sand. It's coarse, it's rough, and it gets everywhere. It's not fun. It's not fun at all. But yeah, lots of people do like sand, and that's great. Probably because they you know, it's weird though, because that's an example of like, I went to the beach when I was young, and it was great in lots of ways. Oh my god. How did they even do that? Anyway, I went to the beach. I loved it in lots of ways. I just remember like the disappointment, because like I had to get in someone else's car. Obviously, as a 5-year-old, I couldn't drive, and like they're like, but your feet are so sandy. And so I'd go to the water to get the sand off my feet, and I'd come back and they're like, they're still so sandy because the water has gotten on them. And then I'd brush them off, but it wouldn't come off. And they'd be like, you know what, your shoes are sandy and it's disappointing me, and there's nothing you can do about it. And maybe that's really, you know, the deep ingrained traumatic reason why I don't like beaches. Or maybe it really is just, you know, actually, beaches aren't great places. The water's nice. See, if there was sea going right up to here, you could sit down on a concrete block. Maybe I'd like that. By the way, this place right here, the Noisy Lobster, is where I want to be at. My shoes are so sandy. Oh no, they're not, they just feel sandy. It is Mexican food night. Wait, is it Mexican food night? It is genuinely Mexican food night tonight. But I'm not here for that. I'm here for the... Wait, where is it? I hope it's in here somewhere. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the walk from Christchurch to a lobster roll, because I'll see you all next time. Is it this place actually? I mean, it's called the Noisy Lobster. They've got to have a lobster roll at a place like this, right? You know, we'll find out. I'll let you know. Hope you don't die in a house fire. Goodbye.